you get to a certain place in life where you know what you'll take, you'll know what you accept, and all the other shit you just won't. And you'll exit it from you, and you won't allow yourself to be around toxicity because you'll learn that you don't need to have that in your life.
To another episode of Lionheart Radio with your host, Rick Alexander. Today I am speaking with the founder of Blue Collar Barbell. She has numerous powerlifting world championships and is listed as one of the top 5 strongest women of all time. And in case any of you men out there want to feel inferior, she's rocked a 700-pound squat, a 455-pound bench, and a 525 dead. Shawna Mendelson, thanks for joining me.
Oh, hi, how are you? Hold on.
Good.
Hold on. This is Chloe.
You got a new puppy?
So I have a new puppy, and I also have a puppy who I've had for 7 years, and they're still getting used to each other. So
I like that she chose to respond.
Right, exactly.
Somebody liked the intro, so that's good.
Yeah, they're both here, and so we just kind of got to play it that way.
Yeah. Cool. So I think I wanted to start. So right now, we're in an interesting time where the conversation has really shifted in the last few years, where it's women in strength has become much more of a mainstream thing, where I don't think it used to be. And so I kind of wanted to talk to you a little bit about what that process has been like, seeing that shift has been like in your own life. And then, so what was it like when you started out? Was it as accepted as it is now?
So when I started, there were women in the sport.
Of course.
We had strongman and we had, powerlifting, of course. But it was, such a fraction of an amount of women compared to today. It's evolved tremendously.
Yeah.
When I first got into the sport, Jill Mills had basically just won, I think it was her first strong woman competition. And she was the only one in strongman, period. As far as a woman's concerned. And then the following year was when some of the Nordic countries started letting women compete and stuff like that. So when I started, just to name some names of my second meet that I had ever done, it was Becca Swanson, it was Jill Mills, it was Carol Bohegan, it was this woman, Krista Ford, and this woman, Joyce Tactile, and a couple others, Amy Weisberger, and those were the main names of women's powerlifting back then.
So did you play sports and you just found that you were naturally really strong? I'm curious, what got you into this whole world back then in the first place?
So, I was a gymnast when I was little.
Okay.
Until I was about 12 or 13. And then I became a girl, so I couldn't flip as high and do all that fun stuff.
Sure.
So I changed my focus and I played ice hockey for a few years, and I was left wing. That was cool too, because I was, especially back then, that was, in the 80s, there were no girls playing ice hockey with a bunch of boys. So I did that. And then my older brother, Scott, he actually started powerlifting first. Scott is an all-time world record holder in the bench press, both raw and equipped. And happens to be one of the strongest bench pressers in the world ever. So he started first, and then my sister-in-law, one day, she's like, Shawna, you got to do this. And I had just graduated college. I was working in the city at that point, and I was like, oh, I don't have time, and blah, 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 and this whole thing.
Right.
And then next thing you know, I go to an Arnold. My brother wins the Arnold, and then I get hooked up with coaches and a gym here in New York called Iron Island Gym, and that's how it all started.
Damn. So was it when you went to his meet, was it you just felt the intensity in the air? I'm just curious what brought you, what made you want to do it?
So I just thought, so I was always a stronger girl, out of all my friends.
Sure.
And, I started lifting weights when I was 14 years old, just in the gym at, I grew up in LA, so we had Nautilus back then and all that stuff. And so, growing up in the gym at an early age was sort of just kind of what I was around.
Right, right.
And then when I went to like my first worlds for powerlifting, where my brother competed in Vegas, we saw a bunch of big, strong dudes. And then again, I don't remember seeing any women then either. And this is going back in like 99, 2000. And I was like, wow, this is really cool.
Yeah.
And then I went to the Arnold Classic in 2000. And I was like, I'm like, this is freaking incredible. And that's when I started really seeing women. And that's when I met this woman named Tina Reinhart. And that's when Amy Weisberger was there also. And I had already known Becca and a couple other girls just from my brother being into the sport. And it just kind of just evolved.
I'm curious, like, what was the culture like then? Like, as far as, like, what was the acceptance like when you were getting into the sport? Were people accepting of you? Was this kind of a closed-off sport? I mean, powerlifting tends to be a little bit elitist anyway, which I kind of want to get into, but I'm curious, like, what was that whole reception like?
So, well, I was lucky enough that I trained at a facility, which, again, was called Iron Island Gym, and the gentleman who owned it, his name was Ken Leisberger.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was one of the forefront kind of individuals who actually brought strength and strongman to the Northeast.
Oh,
Besides Louis Simmons.
And I see you're wearing a West Side shirt now. Have you trained West Side your whole career?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah, pretty much. Since I'm like 19.
Did you ever train at West Side?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You want to talk about that a little bit? Because I haven't talked to too many people that have.
Yeah, so I'm not by any means like an original West Sider. I didn't train there like, I've been invited there by many friends who currently train there. And so anytime I'm getting ready for like a big meet, ever since I was a kid, I would go and train there because not only is it the strongest gym in the world, but, Louis Simmons happens to be probably the best coach as far as the 3 lifts are concerned.
Sure.
Here. And so I was fortunate enough to have the opportunity to go there and have people accept me into their culture. Chuck Vogelpohl doesn't accept people that easily.
Right.
And, Dave Hoff and, back then, like, J.M. Blakely and Dave Tate and all those guys, for you to be accepted as a female into that kind of surrounding was a big deal.
Yeah, was there some turbulence at first, or were they pretty? Because I see people like kind of get spit out by that gym sometimes.
Well, they get spit out because you need to go there to work. If you're not willing to change your mindset and to keep your brain opened, you want to be a sponge. In anything that you do. Sometimes you need to remove your brain and put the sponge in there and just soak up your surroundings and soak up the education part of it.
Yeah.
Because that's where most people lose out. Because, they go into a new place and, yeah, it's foreign. And they have to put up, like, this big persona to think who they are or what they've done. Powerlifting, real powerlifting, for how I came up in the sport, there are no egos. That stuff's just not accepted. And if you're gonna go to a gym like Westside and think that you're gonna go there because you think who you are or what you can do, you don't put in the work, Louis will kick your ass out. He doesn't need you.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You need him more than he needs you. He could give a shit less.
Yeah.
And there's been so many different things that have happened through the years with. Even Chuck Vogelpohl, for example. Chuck left and then came back, and then left and then came back again, So as far as that's concerned, bottom line is you need to have a work ethic, and you need to work hard. That's how I am in my gym, too. I don't let just people come in and train.
Right.
Period.
You don't?
No, my gym's totally private.
Oh, okay. So is it sort of invitation only, or people reach out and they ask you, or?
Some people reach out and ask me, and it's funny because some people will reach out and ask me if they can train here, but then they tell me that they have a coach, which is great. I have no problem with that. But then they want to try to train with my team, and go by what their coach is telling them to do. And I'm like, somebody invites you to their house for dinner, you're going to bring like your whole own dinner with you.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so that's sort of like how I look at it,
Yeah.
And, a lot of people will call me or get in touch with me through Instagram now and all that to ask if they can come here. And everybody's always welcome, But you're not going to come here and dictate to me how you're going to train, because that's not how it works. I would never do that to Louie ever.
Right.
I go there and I'm just like, all right, what do we do? Like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And he's just like, let's go. We're squatting, we're benching, blah, 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 blah. That's it. And I just go with whatever everybody else is doing. That's how you learn.
Right. And so I'm not sure how sort of set in your ways you were when you first started going to Westside, but did you have to sort of bring that beginner's mentality? Like, okay, I've got to relearn some shit the way that they want me to do it. And was there a process there?
So, it's funny because my lifts have evolved so much through the years. Like, if I look back at like my very old videos from when I first started squatting, my entire squat form is so completely different than it was when I first started.
Really?
Oh yeah, 100%. And even though I always trained conjugate, everybody trains differently, and you really need to train for your body. Some people have a bigger arch, some people don't, but you need to accommodate your body, and you have to modify things that are going to work for you.
Yeah. Is that something that Will Louie does a lot at Westside?
Yeah. You have your basic squat and what needs to be done in the squat, but not everybody can squat super, super, super wide. And some people might have a little bit more of an arch. But, the basics are you need to keep your chest up. You got to stay tight. You got to keep your eyes up, that kind of stuff. You got to push your knees out. You're not bending over like an accordion, but yeah, so everything is modified for you. But going into Westside, like I said, even though I knew whatever I knew, I didn't give a shit about what I knew.
Right.
I was there to learn what they know, and I still do that to today.
Yeah.
Anytime I go there and train, I don't even think about what I know, because they know so much more than I know that every time I go there, I'm always learning something new. So, and I'm fortunate enough that, I have people who have, certain eyes that watch me while I'm training and while I'm, getting ready for a big meet and stuff like that I'm always learning from as well. So, that's helpful.
I think so. Coming from somebody, coming from yourself, one of the top 5 strongest women of all time, it's like the fact that you can still take that mentality is something that I think a lot of people can learn about, because quite frankly, I think that's something that holds a shitload of people back in their everyday life. Like when they're taking on new tasks, they're just not willing to go back to the beginning. They're not willing to do that struggle that being a beginner requires, of like learning something new, something foreign, something awkward. And so since they're not willing to do that, like their growth is just plateaued, it seems like.
Yeah. Well, that's what happens, and that's why the conjugate system works so well, because it's constantly evolving.
Is it?
Oh, absolutely.
So if you were to look at like a Westside method from like years ago, it would be different than right now?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so like how?
Okay, so the basics of it are the same.
Yeah.
Because you're working off percentages.
Sure.
But it's grown so much. Back in the day, we used to only do like a 24-week wave.
Like cycle.
Right.
Yep.
So, now like I break it down and I do 4-week waves, or I'll break it down and I'll do like a 6-week wave, just so I can see where I'm at, where I need to be, especially if I'm getting ready for a comp.
Yeah.
I modify it for how it's going to work for me. Do I stick to the basics of what it is? Do I stick to the roots? Absolutely. Mm-hmm. But if I need to change things up, especially if I am lacking in something,
yeah,
then I will need to adjust, my volume, my weights, my bars, how much accommodating resistance I'm using, things like that, in order to get my weaknesses up to par in what I need to do.
And by accommodating resistance, you mean like bands and chains and different things like that?
Bands and chains, special exercises, GPP work, stuff like that.
What kind of GPP work do you do?
Oh my God. So I love like event work. Yeah. So I constantly do like heavy tire flipping. I constantly do tons of box jumps, heavy sleds. I pull trucks. I like pull trucks, rolling wheelbarrows. Anything that's going to make my posterior and my back, excuse my language, strong as fuck.
Yeah.
Because that's what I need, especially to handle the weights that I'm handling at my body weight.
Yeah.
Like, I need to be the most proficient as I can for me.
And so for people, I guess I'm just trying to kind of pull out different training nuggets for people that are listening to this. You have your conjugate method where you're sort of working through percentages in a linear progression, but then is there a method to the madness when it comes to truck pulls and, medleys and event days and stuff like that? Or are you just sort of putting it in there as you can handle it?
So no, I try to do events like twice a month. So for example, I don't deadlift every week. So I'll deadlift maybe once or twice a month max. Because I do belt squats and I do all these other special exercises. But I try to put events in, like maybe yoke carries or whatever it is, at least twice a month. And then I do GPP work 4 days a week. And then I also train like a bodybuilder all throughout the week for 6 days.
Oh, interesting. So that's something you don't hear a lot. So I mean, Brandon Lilly talks about that a little bit, but a lot of people don't. They don't use the body part splits like a bodybuilder does when they're training for strength.
Yeah, well, your body needs to be one unit. And that being said, you have to be strong everywhere. What
do you mean by like one unit? What do you mean?
So you want your body to operate as one entity. So, you don't want to lack like in your abs section. You don't want to lack in your lower back. You don't want to lack in your shoulders because you're not training something or doing something right or properly.
Yeah.
So when I always have a heavy back day. I always have a heavy leg day besides squats. I'm always hitting shoulders. I'm always hitting my delts, and I'm always hitting my biceps and triceps. But that's also because I compete in all three lifts. I'm not just a bench specialist.
Right.
So, and I'm also not a kid. I'm going to be 46 years old in October. So, for me to have the longevity that I have in this sport with no injuries and being at the level that I'm at, I need to be superior.
Yeah, so that was going to be one of my questions. Like, how have you held up? It sounds like really well.
Yeah.
It seems like lifting so much in one plane of motion, it just sort of burns people out. Like, actually, most people I know that were at any kind of a decent level in powerlifting, by the time they're in their 30s, they're having some issues.
Well, it's because they never trained properly and they never listened to their body. A lot of people think, they think, oh, I'm not done yet, I got to do this, or I'm not done yet, I got to do that. You got to be smart. A lot of people forget to use their brain. It's like I see stuff all the time, and I'm just like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, I even say that to some of the guys on my team. Like, after we're training and they're trying to do all this other crazy stuff, I'm like, you need to remember. I'm like, yeah, it's cool to try new stuff. I have no problem with that. I go, but your form and technique has to be on. And I say that every single day when anybody walks through my gym. I don't care if it's somebody who's been lifting for 25 years. If you come into my facility and you look like crap, I'm going to tell you, we need to definitely work on this. We need to change this. You should try this. It's just to benefit you, as the individual.
Right. Yeah, that's something I don't think people think about a lot is like you only have so much focused energy to give to anything. And so if you're doing so much shit, then you don't have, like if your volume is spread out, then when it comes to the main lifts, you don't have the energy in order to keep your back straight, in order to keep some of these things locked on, it seems like.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, 100%. You're getting through them, but you're totally fucking yourself up.
Right. There are days where I'm literally shot Like, like my lower back is screaming from training, or, like the day before or 2 days before, or, something's just nagging me. And quite honestly, like, I'll give myself a day off.
You'll just take it.
I'll just take it. Like, I'm not going to miss anything.
Right.
And I'm really not. Like, it's not like I can't come back the next day and get it done.
Right.
You know what I mean? And the reason why, some people will be like, oh, I would never do that. It screws up your training log, and it screws up this. It doesn't.
Right.
I'm on course right now to get ready for the WPO, which is November 11th. And, I've had some issues. Like, I had my SI joint go out in June, and just like little stupid nagging things that I had to go see my ART for. And, he was like, look, you just need to back off a little bit. But the thing is that I keep my body in shape all year long. So that, if I need to get ready and put, 5, 6, 7, 800 pounds on my back, I'm ready to put that weight on my back.
At any point throughout the year?
Any point throughout the year.
Interesting.
And, yeah, it's because I'm always keeping myself strong. I'm always doing what I need to do in order to facilitate those weights.
Okay.
And that's going without overtraining. It's, proper nutrition. And it is understanding your body and how to maximize your growth and training optimally.
So that's something I kind of want to get more into, because it seems almost counterintuitive. It seems like if you were to peak for a meet, that would help longevity a little bit more, because you're not trying to keep yourself at such a high level for such a long period of time.
So, so I'm a little bit of a different athlete. Like, I don't stay peaked. I don't need to stay peaked.
Right.
And me peaking for a meet, like, I've never fully maxed out, like, on any lift my entire life.
Really?
I always keep, a little bit of gas in the engine in case I need to do that at a meet. So whenever I'm training in the gym and whenever I'm getting ready for a meet, like, I'll never take, like, my third attempt squat, like, in the gym ever.
Really?
Yep.
Damn. So it seems like a lot of lifters are going to be afraid they're leaving something on the table.
Yeah, but that's the whole point. Like, you don't need, what people need to learn is, if you're going for an all-time world record, then you want to train for that all-time world record.
Yeah.
Okay? So if you're going for an all-time world record, you better know that that specific number is not going to be your end-all, be-all. You're going to want to eventually break that all-time world record again. So me knowing, like, right now, the all-time world squat record is 770 pounds. I just hit a 775-pound squat June 21st in York, PA. And as I was going down into the hole, my SI joint popped. I blew it up through the hole, but I missed depth by, like, that much because I couldn't sit. My body wouldn't let me get back down into it.
Right.
So, like, I've squatted over 800 already in the gym. So, when you're competing at a meet, especially at that kind of a level, you need to go also for a total, because it can be any given Sunday.
Yeah.
You can be totally high, totally ready, totally perfect. Everything can be going great and you're ready, and you get there and something gets messed up. May it be equipment, may it be the amount of lifters, may it be, they're running you through the meet too fast. I mean, it could be anything. God forbid injury, so that's kind of like how you want to plan. It's not like you're planning only for numbers. Numbers don't mean shit.
Right.
You got to be smart. So, that's the whole thing. That's the whole thing of learning how to powerlift right.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and clearly, I mean, you're onto something, because I really don't know anyone that stayed that injury-free, especially handling that kind of weight, girl or guy.
Yeah. Well, my brother's been injury-free too, except for he had a pec tear like a couple years ago.
So, and when you talk about GPP work, what are you talking about there? Because you said the events a couple times a month, but what are we talking about? Cardio, like?
Yeah, so it's all cardio-driven with weight.
Like?
So I'm either pushing sleds, I'm either pulling sleds, I'm doing carries, either with farmer's walks or just heavy dumbbell carries. with a weighted vest on. I'm doing box jumps with a weighted vest on or extra weights in my hands. I'm doing belt squats because I have a belt squat machine. I do all different kinds of stuff with that. I utilize my bamboo bars. Those are fantastic to utilize for GPP because they keep your CNS moving. It's all kinetic.
Right.
So if you can get a PVC pipe or some kind of bamboo bar in that sense and throw weight on it and walk around with it above your head or, bench press with it or squat with it, good mornings, anything like that. Yeah. I'm constantly changing up my training, constantly.
And it sounds like you're really hammering midline stability and posterior chain like crazy.
That's the whole point. I mean, when I bench press, I arch. I got to bring my legs back. So my back has to be strong. My legs have to be strong. I have to be able to push down to the ground. And, I need to have triceps. So when you bench, you're benching off your back. Right. I'm not using my chest to bench press. I'm not benching like a flat, open, wide bodybuilder. When I squat, everything's here. Everything is my back and my posterior. Same thing with the deadlift. I train my deadlift both conventional and sumo. And then when I go to a meet, I always pull sumo. But I always make sure my erectors are strong. Again, my posterior is strong. My quads are strong. So, and then you have to remember air. Your air is your energy. I need to be able to push my air into my body and push through my belt. That's what's going to give me the tightness.
Right. When you train people, do you train them in the similar fashion that you train yourself, or do you have a coach?
I do have a coach.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, my coach is Dave Hoff and Louis Simmons.
Okay.
And my brother Scott helps me with my bench, too.
Okay. But you train people the way that you train yourself?
For powerlifting, absolutely.
Okay.
Do I use other tools that I've gotten from other lifters? Like, for example, Gary Frank taught me how to deadlift. If you don't know who Gary Frank is, you really should do some research. He was the first guy to ever total 2,500, 2,600, 2,700, 2,800, and 2,900 ever in the world.
Damn.
He's an ex-NFL player, ex-professional arm wrestler. He's down in Louisiana. He's the president of the APF Powerlifting Federation.
So we have a lot of people that listen to this that are CrossFitters, runners, just sort of, because we jump all over the place as far as guests that we have on, whatever. And so people are hearing these numbers, like you're talking about hitting an 800-pound squat. Like, I think just for people to get their mind around that is like, what the fuck are we talking about right now? Like, what can you talk a little bit about, like, how long does this process take? And then at the same time, are you still getting stronger in your life?
It's interesting because I feel like I am the strongest that I've ever been, like, this last, year and a half or so.
Interesting. Okay.
So, it took me a long time to get here. When I first squatted 600, that was back in, 2002 when I first squatted 6.
So you hit 600 within, 3 years of starting, though?
So I hit 600 within 4 years of starting, really.
Okay, yeah.
Well, my very first meet, I squatted 4. So that sort of gives you an idea. But see, the difference there is when I first started, I had a coach who, and this is not to bash anybody or anything. Times were a little different back then. And I had a coach back then who, he definitely held me back. Every time I wanted to go up in weight or do something like that, he was like, oh, no, let's not do that. Let's do this. And so after so my very first meet, I squatted 400. Then I did APF Senior Nationals, and then I did Worlds. After my first Worlds, I stopped using that guy as a coach because, like I said, I wasn't going anywhere. It was. So that's when I really reached out to Louis, and I was like, I need help. And I had seen Louis at APF Nationals, and back then there was also another coach there by the name of Rick Hussey. And Rick Hussey owned a gym out of Omaha, Nebraska called Big Iron Gym. And that's where Sean Frankel, Becca Swanson, James Grandick, a bunch of other lifters had come out of. And I used to send both Louis Simmons and Rick Hussey video VHS tapes of my training. and they would watch it. And then Louis would call me back and he would give me a whole program to do. And then Rick would call me back and tell me, what I would need to fix and whatever.
Yeah.
And, and I would bounce what they were both saying off of each other. And that's how I would come up with my programming. And the moment I got rid of that coach and started really like honing in on my skills and what I needed to change and do, that's when my lift started to soar.
Interesting. So if you look at, is there anything that you would attribute your success to over your career? So getting a better coach, of course. But is there would you say it's consistency was the thing, or?
So it's really keeping an open mind.
I like that keeps coming up.
And listening to feedback.
Yeah.
And taking constructive criticism when it really means something, and putting what you're learning or what people are telling you into action, and not being afraid. I talk to Donnie Thompson at least weekly, sometimes a couple times a week. He's a very dear friend of mine, and we talk about all different kinds of stuff, the athletic mindset and fear and all of those other things, adrenaline that goes through your body, when you're training or you're about to hit the platform. And he said it just as I did. He was thinking when he hit his first 3,000-pound total, he was my age. He was 46 years old. And so he's like, I said to him, I'm like, I just have no fear. I got to a point where I get under a squat bar and I just have one job.
Mm-hmm.
My job is to bring the bar down and bring the bar up, and I only listen to one voice.
Yeah.
So there can be 10,000 people there in front of me screaming all this stuff, and I only hear one person. So I'm at a point now where I've learned so much, and I've really learned to hone in on me and listen to what I need to do for me.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people forget that because they're trying to impress so many people. I don't give a shit about that.
Yeah, it's like we focus on the wrong metrics, right?
Absolutely. It's all the time. So I try to instill in my lifters and in all my clients. I work with people that are from 13 years old. My oldest client is 82.
Oh, damn.
And just being a person, a human.
Mm-hmm.
We all have the same emotions. We all have the same fears. We all have the unknowing.
Yeah.
But if you don't push yourself or you don't give yourself that kick to experience and just understand, look, fuck it. You'll never know. You'll never know.
Do you think that comes innate? And you must see it within clients you coach and stuff. You're right. Everybody has that fear of the unknown, right? But people don't necessarily know how to step into it and grapple with it and make something useful with it, right? And
Absolutely.
So, has that always been easy for you? Where do you?
It's not that it's easy for me. I'm able to switch.
You know the utility in it. Seems like
right. I don't know if it comes from my upbringing or just my focus or my drive for what I really want to accomplish.
Yeah.
But I just kind of inherited this ability to just be like, okay, this is I need to put myself in my tunnel now.
Right. That's an interesting thing, right? Because we preach balance a lot in 2018.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like success, it kind of demands focus, not balance. Right.
A lot of times people think that, you have to be balanced in all aspects of your life in order to move forward. I don't believe that to be true. Yeah, you don't want to have chaos. You don't want to have crazy ass shit going on. But, there's some times where it needs just to be about you. Mm-hmm. And you can't worry about every single thing that's going on around you, because when you start worrying about all that stuff, you're not tuned in. So you really need to have focus, and you need to see that light that's at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah. By tuned in, do you mean just tuned into what you really want and
tuned into yourself internally? You need to learn who you are, and you need to learn and understand what you're capable of and believe it and really do it. Once you're able to identify that and to become one, anything's possible.
I agree, but it's 2018, right? We have inputs like crazy right now. There's a lot of people that know what they should want, who they should be, what they should be doing. But how do you, I mean, I guess what is your process? How do you go about figuring out who the fuck you really are, like what you really want?
You know, I've had a lot of different life experiences.
Yeah.
I wasn't brought up with a silver spoon in my mouth. I moved out of my house when I was 15 years old. I'd been working since I'm 12. I changed my birth certificate. I came from a very poor household.
Work you did?
Yeah.
Oh, damn. Okay.
I had to change my birth certificate to work at the mall so I can help my mom pay for rent because she was a single mom and my dad was an asshole.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, for many years, I had to become very independent. But, you know, I always knew what I wanted to be, what I wanted to do, which was to be successful for myself. Not saying that I wanted to own a gym or not saying like I didn't have that future.
Right.
But I did know that, you know, I didn't want to be poor. I did know that I wanted to be educated. I did know that I wanted to have a better life for myself. And I did know that I was going to do whatever it took for me to accomplish what I needed to accomplish for myself. Okay? All my friends growing up, they all had money. They all came from different areas. They all got into drugs. Who's dead? Who's got into gangs? Who did whatever else? You know, they could have taken the opportunities that they had and done whatever they wanted to, right? But you make a choice and you make a decision. And those decisions are what's going to take you to whatever path you need to go. And I got to a point in my life where I was like, okay, these are the pros, these are the cons. Some of the cons could be transferred over to a pro, but that's where I want to be. And so if you want to talk about balance, maybe that's where you need a balance. You need to balance what your pros and cons are and what the better decision's going to be to make that con into a pro if you can.
So you're very sure and empowered, and I'm sure that's a byproduct of being strong as fuck physically and working hard your whole entire life and kind of, you know, taking the things that you want in this life. Do you ever barrel down the path and every once in a while look around and be like, fuck, am I going the right direction? Because that's the thing. When you're independent and you kind of are going after the things you want in life, you tend to look around and find that you're alone sometimes because that means not following the beaten path. Do you ever wonder, like, oh, fuck, this might not be right?
No, I changed my career 3 times. You know, I had my undergrad in fashion buying, merchandising, and business. I worked in the garment district for 8.5 years. And I thought that's where I wanted to be. I was like, wow, I'm in New York. I'm in the city. I'm working in fashion, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And then I started powerlifting, okay? And I was still working in fashion, but then my body started changing. I started putting muscle on. I started looking different. So I couldn't fit into like those little tiny dresses that, you know, all those women were wearing. And I was just a little different. And I felt like at that point, after like I sort of was like, okay, I don't think this is what I want to do. I need to kind of like change my focus a little bit. And then I became an executive recruiter, which was go completely off the beaten path.
Yeah.
You know, while still powerlifting. And then as I was a recruiter and I started doing very, very well, which was when I decided, you know what, I got to open up a gym. Like, that's what I have to do. So while I was a recruiter, I went back to school and got my master's in kinesiology and sports science because there was no way I was opening up a gym. God forbid it didn't work out. What the fuck was I going to do? I was going to quit my career. So at least if I was educated and I had the education behind me, and plus I didn't want to just be like a trainer.
Sure.
You know, like I could coach or I could teach or whatever I could do, I would have that as a backup. But thankfully, I worked my ass off and my gym worked out.
Right. So I actually love this because I get a lot of emails, maybe because of the content of the show or whatever, where people they are going one path in their life, and then they find a sport or a hobby, and it starts to consume more of their thought process and thinking, and that just changes you, right? As you have to level up who you are as a human as you kind of pull on these different interests in life. And then they're trying to figure out, well, what's the next move? What was that process like, and how do you figure out what's the next move? Did you just sort of know it needed to be something new?
So, yeah, so at that point, when I was an executive recruiter, I was in a relationship with my ex-husband, who I've been divorced with now for going on 17 years. So I was in a very different place emotionally, and my brother had a lot to do with the fact of me opening up my first gym. Like, he helped me a lot. He owns a gym out in LA. It's called Mendy's Gym. And so, he just knew that I was just going to evolve that way. Like he saw it like 2 years before I ever even opened up a gym. He was like, you're just going to open a gym, because he always owned a gym.
Right.
And then I approached him. I was like, all right, I think I'm ready to do it. And so I had a lot of his support. And my ex-husband at the time, at first, he didn't want to have anything to do with it. I was like, fine, I'm going to do it on my own. So he wound up coming in with me on it anyway. And I just kind of like went for it. I was like, all right, well, we're here. I have money. I found a building, and we just did it.
Yeah, it does seem like that becomes a point, right, where you're like inching down this path, but then there's a point where it's like, well, fucking jump or don't.
Right. Well, that was the whole thing. It was either I was going to do it then or I wasn't. I still had a great career. I didn't have to leave, being a recruiter. I did phenomenal at it. I had a great business. I built it from 0 to 5 million in 2.5 years. Like, it was awesome. But I knew that's not where I wanted to be. I didn't want to be on a phone for 5 hours a day talking to 150 people a day, stuck in like a little cubicle thing. Like, I wanted to do what I really loved to do. Mm-hmm. And you know what? It was at the point, as you said, it was either I was going to fucking jump or I wasn't. I was going to take the risk or I wasn't. And I just went for it. And I took the risk, and, and I really worked my ass off. I opened up my gym without one client. I didn't have one client, and I didn't have one member. My first member that I started training was my accountant.
Nice. Yeah.
And then, like, my first gym that I started training at, Iron Island Gym, they had gone out of business. And we had a team of 50 people that we used to train with every Friday night, every Saturday night. Not one person from that team came to my gym to come train. Not one.
Damn, that must have been disheartening.
Well, it was, because I was building it for them, like for all of us, because nobody had a place to go. And so when not one of them came or wanted to come or whatever, we were all very, very different as far as religion went. And
interesting.
I wasn't part of what they were trying to do.
Okay.
Because that's just not my religion, and I wasn't going to be sucked into something that I wasn't comfortable with.
Right, sure.
So, that's where that all stemmed from. So I was like, fine, I'm just going to do it on my own. And so I literally went from one client to training 77 sessions a week to having 5 trainers working out of my gym. Like, it was insane. Damn. And that's it. Yeah, and I've moved my gym a couple of times just as far as growing and things like that. And now, in Bohemia, I've been here now going on 6 years.
Was there a moment when nobody came with you, so to speak, where at first it was like, fuck, is this right?
Yeah, we had like an open training night where everybody came to train like once, and everybody had a great time, and it was awesome. But, I had to have rules. And people had to pay dues in order to come to the gym. Like, I couldn't just let people come train for free.
Sure.
They paid dues to the old gym, and it wasn't like I was asking for so much money. I think I was asking like $20 a month or something like that back then.
Right.
Just to keep the lights on and so that we can buy more equipment and whatever it was. And they just didn't want to have anything to do with it. So, that's fine.
Right. Well, and I've seen that a lot. It's like people It's probably a overpopularized meme on Instagram now, but people like have no problems shelling out like $150 for new Nikes, and then your friend opens a business and they like want a discount right away, and you're like, fuck, man, this is my life. Yeah.
Right, exactly. You know, so but you know, you learn things through the years, and you change things through the years, and you know, I learned that I no longer need to have an open gym.
Mm-hmm.
I no longer need to have people come in and ruin my equipment or take advantage of me. I can do things on my terms, on my hours, and work with the people who I really, really want to work with.
Yeah, but knowing your value like that is actually pretty rare. A lot of people will take, you know, they'll take all the shit clients and they'll reduce their own value over and over.
Right. Well, that's the whole thing that I won't do. I'll never reduce my value.
From the beginning?
From the beginning. I know my worth. You know, and I don't kill people on prices, you know. I mean, I charge $65 an hour. Mm-hmm. That's what I charge.
Yeah.
You know, I know people that are at my level, they charge, you know, $125 an hour. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm not in it, you know, to break the bank. You know, I'm in it to bring my knowledge, my expertise to somebody or people who want to grow, learn, and become champions, or just grow and learn and become better them. You know,
it seems
that's
like
just what I believe.
Yeah, I think if you work with you, that's what it seems like you get. It's like you have, you know, we started off the conversation talking about technical powerlifting expertise, but then it's like, oh, right, but then there's this whole 46 years of life shit figuring it out that you really have nailed down. Yeah,
it took me a long time. I mean, it took me 46 years to meet Jay, my fiance, and we say it all the time. Yeah. You know, like one day, you know, it was just one of those things, like you never think you're ever going to like meet the right person, or you're, you know, I never in my life thought I'd ever get married ever again for the rest of my life. For what? I don't have children. I have a business. I'm successful. Da 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 da. Yeah. And then all of a sudden you meet that person and it's like, wow, where the fuck have you been my whole life?
Right. Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So I think that, well, hopefully, you know, you get to a certain place in life where you know what you'll take, you'll know what you accept, and all the other shit you just won't, and you'll exit it from you, and you know you won't allow yourself to be around toxicity, because you'll learn that you don't need to have that in your life.
I think that's fucking really good advice. And so now, are you doing online training and the gym thing? Like, what does your business look like now? Where's it evolved to?
Oh yeah, no. So I've been doing online training going on like 10 years.
Oh, okay.
So I've done online training for both regular fitness, because I used to Skype with my clients all over the world. So I did that for a long time. When they would be traveling on business or whatever, I would train them in their hotel room, like in the middle of the night. So that's how my online coaching went. But yeah, no, I've been doing online coaching for a very long time. So I do online coaching and programming. I have my facility, and everything is all one-on-one training. So it's all private. You get me for a complete hour for whatever you want to do. Again, may it be regular fitness, may it be prehab, may it be rehab, powerlifting, strength in general, contest, whatever. I do all that. And you know, I run events out of my gym, and it's really cool.
Yeah. I feel like people should go to you for the mindset piece. I feel like that's the thing. I mean, you know, I interview a shitload of people on this podcast, and a lot of elite people, a lot of people that have done really cool things in life, and I'm impressed with your mindset. I feel like that's awesome. So
Thank you so much.
The final question is the Lionheart Kicker. We ask every guest, and if you were given a platform for the day, and you could give advice, or guaranteed it would be translated to every language, and everybody in the world would hear it, and they might not all follow it because people are dicks, but they would definitely hear what you said, what would you tell people?
Be who you are. Know who you are. And accept who you are. Fuck the rest of the world. Get out there and do it. Put a bar on your back. Go for a run. Climb a fucking mountain. You know?
Yeah.
But just do it and just live, because you have no idea what tomorrow's going to bring.
That's really good fucking advice. I feel like going out and working out right fucking now. Shawna, thank you for joining me. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you again so much for having me on. It's been an honor speaking with you.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thanks. You got it.
Cool. Thanks for listening to Lionheart Radio. I hope that the information from today's show will make you fitter, happier, and healthier. For the show notes of this episode and every episode, head to www.lionheartrad.io. Yep, just like Lionheart Radio. And please, if you have the time, head over to iTunes and give us a 5-star rating. It really helps us to know that we're on the right track in delivering you reliable information and value. As always, feedback is welcomed. If you have any comments on the show or would like to suggest a guest, send me an email at rick@luavive.com. That's LUAVIVE.com. Thanks for your support, and we will see you next time.
Bitch, I feel good. Don't I look stupendous? My shine is so endless, and shit you can do to end this. Even when I'm dead, niggas still gon' bump that chip shit. Coke, white, Escalade on cinches for you dipshit. So you won't forget this. Midwest nigga be the coldest. Cleveland